So, let's talk about something that's happening right now, something that's changing everything. The line between us and our technology is getting seriously blurry. We're building machines that can think for themselves, and at the same time, we're building tech that hooks directly into our own thoughts. It's wild. But it forces us to ask a really big question. As we start to merge mind and machine, how do we make sure we don't lose the very things that make us human? Let's get into it.
And this, right here, is the question at the heart of it all. I mean, we're getting amazing at building artificial intelligence, but just being smart, having raw processing power, that's not the same as having wisdom or moral compass. So as we sprint into this crazy new future, we've got to figure out how to build machines we can actually truly trust.
Okay, so one of the most mind-bending ideas out there is that to build a genuinely ethical AI, we might have to give it something like consciousness. Yeah, really. We're not just talking about a list of rules to follow, but an actual internal framework for making tough decisions.
This quote from Antonio Cella's research really hits the nail on the head. We're way beyond simple if-then programming now. We're talking about the real possibility of machines that have their own intentions. And you have to ask, if a machine has its own goals, its own intentions, how do we make sure its actions are ethical?
So how in the world would you even start to build that? Well, one of the leading ideas is something called the Global Workspace Theory, or GWT. The easiest way to think about it is like a stage inside your mind. You've got all these different actors backstage. These are the unconscious processors, and they've all got their own take on a situation. They're all competing to get on stage, into that one single spotlight. That spotlight is the global workspace.
And here's how that might actually work for an AI. Let's say it's facing a dilemma. You could have one processor looking at it from a purely logical angle. Another is running an ethical analysis. Maybe a third is pulling from past experiences. They all fight for that spotlight, for access to the workspace. Whichever one wins, its perspective gets broadcast and becomes the machine's conscious choice, the thing that drives its next action. You can see how this makes an AI way more flexible than one just ticking off boxes on a pre-programmed list.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, because it changes how we think about responsibility. Researchers used a system called Arcadia to run a simulation of this kind of AI in a self-driving car. What they found was that if the AI's focus of attention, its conscious workspace, was completely locked onto the pedestrian when the car hit them, then you could argue the AI was responsible. Why? Because it dedicated all of its cognitive resources to that one action. It's not just about what the machine did anymore, it's about what it meant to do.
So on one side, we have people trying to build a mind for the machine, and on the other, we have people trying to connect the machine directly to our minds. This brings us to the incredible world of brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs.
Just get a load of this number. A recent study looked at over 25,000 research papers on brain-computer interfaces. That number alone tells you everything you need to know. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy anymore. This is a massive global effort trying to do everything from helping paralyzed patients move again to literally decoding our thoughts into speech. And it is moving at a breakneck speed.
And just look at this chart. Since 2019, the number of BCI research publications coming out of China has absolutely skyrocketed, while the output from the US has actually dipped a little. This is a huge shift in the global landscape of this tech. Make no mistake, the race to understand, decode, and maybe even write to the human brain is definitely on.
But with all this incredible promise, all this potential for connection, there comes an equally massive risk. What happens when that direct link between our minds and the digital world becomes our biggest vulnerability?
I mean, the contrast is just stark. On one hand, you have an almost utopian vision, right? We could restore abilities to people with disabilities, translate thoughts directly into words, maybe even achieve true mind-to-mind communication. But the flip side is a full-on dystopia. Cyber attackers getting access to your raw brain signals, hackers altering the commands your brain sends, and the invasion of the very last private place you have, your own mind.
Let's just make this super personal for a second. Imagine you could plug something into your head to back up your memories, or learn a new language instantly. Sounds pretty cool, right? But now imagine that someone else could hack that port. The phrase brain hacking might sound like something from a movie, but it's the very real fundamental security challenge of this entire field.
So, when you're staring down these unbelievable possibilities and these terrifying risks, how do you even begin to move forward? Just going faster, innovating harder? That's clearly not enough.
We need a totally new blueprint. And that new blueprint has a name: conscious innovation. It's this idea that we have to be proactive. We have to put ethics first and think about the consequences of what we're building right from the very beginning, not just as some cleanup job later on.
So what does that actually look like? Well, it's built on 5 big ideas that basically flip the old way of doing things on its head. Instead of just chasing profits, it's about being purpose-driven and solving real human problems. Instead of only thinking about the end user, it's about being aware of everyone and everything affected, the community, the planet, you name it. And it puts things like ethics, transparency, and inclusivity right at the core of the whole process.
Really, the big takeaway here is that we need a fundamental shift in how we think. For decades, the main question in the tech world has been, can we build it? Conscious innovation forces us to ask 2 way more important questions. First, should we build it? And then, if the answer is still yes, how do we build it so that it truly benefits everyone?
At the end of the day, that line between mind and machine, between a beautiful dream and a total nightmare, it's going to be drawn by the choices we all make right now. The future isn't some place we're going to arrive at, it's something we are actively building. So the only question left is, what are we going to choose to build?